the latest American horror film strikes with a shock. It's another masterpiece by Demián Rugna following Aterrados. The film continues the tradition of American gore while opening a Pandora's box of human morality. 9 out of 10 people with a sound mind will go mad after watching it, so hurry and invite your friends to join. The story unfolds on a farm. While patrolling, Pedro and Jimmy discover a severed hand and half of a man's corpse in the woods. The wound suggests the upper body was eaten by something. Following the scent, the hunting dogs quickly lead them to a household. Upon entering, Pedro finds that the male homeowner, Goriel, has long been dead for unknown reasons. His body is covered in pus-filled sores, swollen to the point of bursting. Pedro quickly reports this to Ruiz. After inspecting the corpse, and due to its large size and lack of a sufficiently large coffin, they decide to wrap the body in a sheet, load it onto a truck, and prepare to bury it simply. But as soon as they finish moving the corpse, a pungent stench of decay emanates from Pedro.
Ти його торкався? Ні. Треба буде спалити одяг. Гальмуй, обережно!
But they didn't hear the boy while they were sitting in the car. Only after driving 300 kilometers do they realize the corpse has disappeared, leaving behind yellowish corpse grease. Although they feel guilty, the loss of the body saves them the trouble of digging and burying, so they head home. But that night, thunder suddenly rumbles ominously in the sky, and Ruiz is filled with dread, sensing that something is about to happen. Sure enough, the next day, a horrific event occurs in Ruiz's sheep pen. A ram has become pregnant overnight, and it's apparent that the lamb will be born soon. Ruiz fires a shot into the sky, scaring off the other sheep, but the pregnant ram doesn't move.
Ти загубиш нас, коханий. Ми будемо батьками. Не роби цього, будь ласка. Прошу тебе.
Then, the ram glares at Ruiz with eyes that eerily resemble those of the deceased Uriel. The ram even approaches Ruiz and presses its head against the barrel of the gun. Ruiz shoots the ram, but as it falls, Ruiz's wife, Jimena, suddenly swings an axe at Ruiz, striking him down. Ruiz dies on the spot. Afterward, Jimena, seemingly possessed, kneels down and begins hacking at herself with the axe until she is dead. Meanwhile, at Pedro's house, where the body was discarded, a mysterious mark of ram's horns appears on the wall. This symbol is exclusive to evil spirits, and Pedro is terrified. But just then, a frantic knock at the door. Pedro goes to see and finds it's a neighbor's child.
Будь ласка, я замерз. Благаю, пане Ясурло. Пістолет 38 калібр.
Realizing the gravity of the situation, Pedro decides to head into town at dawn to find his ex-wife, Sabrina, and take her and their children away. Due to the continuous stench of decay emanating from him, he takes off his clothes upon entering, but this infuriates Sabrina.
Ти божевільний.
Буде катастрофа.
Тобі не можна тут бути. Негайно йди. Ти мене чуєш?
Мені-
Забирайся!
Мені потрібен одяг!
At that moment, Sabrina's dog sniffs Pedro's discarded clothes and its eyes change. As Pedro and Sabrina argue heatedly, the dog sneaks up to Sabrina's daughter, Vicky, bites her, and drags her away. Witnessing all this, Santino is petrified and watches helplessly as a large wolf dog drags his sister away. He rushes to call for his mother, only to find the dog has gone mad. Leonardo quickly grabs a shotgun, intending to end it with the dog.
Залиш зброю! Гей! Не можна стріляти! Лео!
But minutes later, gunshots are heard. The dog has been killed, but Vicky is nowhere to be seen. Pedro, witnessing this scene, immediately has a bad feeling and runs back, only to see a bizarre sight. Vicky was not only back, but also lying in her mother's arms.
Тато тебе вб'є.
Льола, я не зрозуміла, що ти кажеш.
Тато приїде додому на машині і пум!
Sabrina thinks her daughter is traumatized and speaking nonsense, but Pedro, alert, pulls his son behind him, knowing the real Vicky is dead, and what's returned is merely a vessel for evil spirits. Pedro hurries to take his 2 sons and drive away from there, but just then, Leonardo returns. Seeing his wife and daughter at the door, he floors the gas pedal and charges toward them. Pedro, seeing this, drives away in fright. Leonardo, having hit his wife and daughter, watches as he kills his child, but the next second, the daughter is jumping around alive beside the car. Meanwhile, Pedro has picked up his mother and brother Jimmy after taking his sons and plans to leave town. However, on the way, the deceased Sabrina calls. To not scare the children, Pedro steps out of the car before pressing the answer button.
Ти забрав моїх дітей. Я хочу, щоб ти їх повернув.
Діти в порядку.
Хаїр не може бути далеко від дому. Він повинен прийняти свої ліки. Поверни його. Негайно привези Хаїра!
Hearing the call, Pedro is horrified and hangs up immediately, crushing the phone underfoot. But then, Pedro breaks down in tears. If he hadn't rashly gone to find Sabrina, nothing would have happened to Sabrina and Leonardo's daughter. He brought the evil spirit to Sabrina's house, and now the evil spirit will pursue his two sons through Sabrina. Jimmy immediately thinks of Mirtha, a medium who might help them, but when they reach Mirtha's house, it's already dark, and the others quickly hide inside. However, Jair, who has autism, refuses to leave the car. Pedro stays to sleep in the car with him, but Jair keeps his eyes open. A dark shadow outside the window draws his gaze. As the shadow approaches, Jair's breathing becomes more and more rapid. Meanwhile, Pedro's mother, asleep, sees Sabrina in the bedroom holding Santino, looking ready to leave. Unaware of Sabrina's death, the mother quickly inquires.
Мені паморочиться в голові.
Тому що я їм потрібна. Я заберу своїх дітей туди, де ніхто не зможе їм нашкодити.
When Sabrina turns around, her mother sees that Sabrina has long been disfigured, clearly a corpse. Pedro's mother, terrified, runs out of the room and calls for Pedro, but by the time Pedro arrives, Sabrina has already taken Santino to the edge of the balcony.
Тату.
Ні! Ні!
Pedro rushes downstairs, but there are no bodies below. Sabrina and Santino have vanished. Meanwhile, Jair, left alone in the car, starts acting strangely.
На секунду. Подивись на його ноги і руки. Демон проник йому в голову і в пастці.
All the strange events started with Uriel. They must find Uriel's body and dispose of it. They split into two groups. Mirtha, armed with exorcism tools, goes with Pedro to find the body, while Jimmy looks for Sabrina and Santino. Jimmy quickly spots Sabrina carrying a child, walking on her tiptoes. He chases after her, but as he gets closer, he sees Sabrina tearing at the child's body, devouring it with relish. Seeing his little nephew's body mangled, Jimmy's heart ached immensely. He then speeds up and crashes Sabrina into a tree, ending the wicked act. Meanwhile, Pedro and Mirtha arrive at the road where the body was lost. Mirtha quickly determines the body is nearby due to the presence of an elementary school.
Зло любить дітей, а діти полюбляють зло.
Pedro drives quickly to the school. Inside, it's pitch dark, but they can't use flashlights. The light would expose them and attract evil spirits, so they search in the dark. Pedro finds a classroom filled with students sitting motionless, their eyes tightly shut, seemingly in fear. Just a few days ago, a strange male corpse appeared near the school. Anyone who touched the body became controlled by it, turning into a homicidal maniac. Mirtha hurriedly stepped forward to inquire.
Ховається десь. Можеш сказати, де воно? Ми прийшли допомогти.
Upon seeing the little girl's rotting leg, Mirtha immediately retreated from the classroom. The girl behind had obviously been dead for a long time, and the entire classroom was filled with the stench of decay. Mirtha came out and couldn't stop vomiting. Just then, a little boy pushing a bicycle came to school. Mirtha looked on in disbelief. What was wrong with these children? Why would they gather at the school in the middle of the night? No matter how Pedro asked, the little boy remained silent, eventually abandoning his bicycle and running directly into the classroom. But soon, the boy ran out again.
Ви шукаєте Уріеля? Вхід із деревом.
Поряд з ротондою?
After hearing this, Pedro immediately started the car to go find the body at the teacher's house. But at that moment,
Це брехня.
Що сталося?
Бреше.
А?
Не йди, куди він сказав.
Куди?
Нема його там. Уріель у моєму домі. У мене вдома, у мене.
Pedro was a bit baffled. Why was this foul-smelling corpse so sought after? Mirtha, however, keenly sensed that these two children were lying. Their poor acting was actually hiding something. Mirtha and Pedro immediately returned to the classroom and found the stage covered in white lime footprints. Lime is used for preservation. Pedro immediately lifted a plank and saw a body underneath, but it wasn't Uriel.
Дорослі. Ніколи такого.
Це зробили діти?
Це вже не діти. Сходи за моїми речами.
Pedro rushed to the car to get tools. Just then the little girl starts yelling again.
Хіба ви не бачите? Батьки і вчителі мертві! Вони всередині!
Ані кроку ближче. Не смій навіть ворушити.
Just as Pedro returned, the girl immediately shut up. Then, Mirtha started assembling the exorcism tools, but as Pedro lifted more floorboards, he found them filled with bodies. After bringing all the bodies up, he discovered the one at the bottom was Uriel they were looking for.
Він тут.
Живий?
Рухається. Вбий мене.
Uriel was too heavy. Pedro couldn't lift him alone and had to remove more floorboards. At that moment, the girl spoke again, saying there was an axe in the office. Mirtha immediately advised Pedro not to listen to the girl. This child was already demonized and spoke no truth. But Pedro thought if there really was an axe in the office, he could get rid of the evil spirit sooner and save his two sons. So, ignoring Mirtha's warnings, Pedro ran to the office, but there was no axe. As soon as Pedro entered, the children locked the door. Then, screams from outside. Mirtha was tackled and brutally beaten by the children. After breaking the glass to get out, Pedro found Mirtha dragged away, leaving only a trail of blood. Pedro regretted his foolishness for causing Mirtha harm, but at that moment, Uriel's head emerged from under the floorboards. This was the man responsible for ruining Pedro's family. Pedro grabbed whatever was at hand and violently smashed Uriel's head, killing him. However, the next second, Uriel gave birth to a bloody infant. It was the evil spirit's fetus. Upon seeing this, the children immediately showed joyful smiles. The more people killed, the stronger the evil spirit would become. Then, Pedro was marked. He would become the next vessel for the fetus. When Pedro returned home, only Jair was there, and his mother was nowhere to be found. Pedro gets his son a box of ice cream, and Jair starts choking. Pedro rushed to get a spoon but pulled out a clump of white hair from Jair's mouth. Then, Jair vomited a severed finger, which was Pedro's mother's. It turned out that after Pedro left the previous night, Jair, unable to bear his hunger, ate Pedro's mother. Pedro could no longer contain himself and ran outside to cry in despair. He just wanted to live a quiet life on the farm. But why did all these tragedies befall him? Well, that's the story for today. See you next time.